I cut off my twin sister at 29 after catching her kiss my fiancé. 10 years of hate later, she died in a car crash. I didn't even want to go to her funeral, but my mom begged me to. I sat there in that cold church pew, staring at her casket, feeling nothing but the weight of 10 years of silence between us. After everyone left, I found myself in her childhood bedroom, untouched since the day she moved out. That's when I saw it. A manila folder on her desk with my name written in her careful handwriting. My hands shook as I reached for it. I opened that folder, and what I found shattered everything I thought I knew. Let me take you back to that day, March 15th, 2014. I remember it like it happened 5 minutes ago because some wounds never heal. They just get buried under layers of rage and time. I was supposed to be the happiest woman alive. My wedding was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks! I had my dress hanging in the closet, the venue booked, the flowers ordered. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly how I dreamed it would be since we were little girls playing bride in our mother's old curtains. I decided to surprise Thomas at his apartment. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 8 months, and I thought surprising him with lunch would be romantic. I had his favorite sandwich from that little deli he loved, the one that made their bread fresh every morning. I was practically skipping up those stairs to his second-floor apartment, my heart full of love and excitement about our future together. I used my key, the one he'd given me 6 months earlier with such ceremony, like it was the most important thing in the world. "This is yours now," he'd said, "because you're my home." God, how naive I was. How completely, utterly naive. I opened that door expecting to see my fiancé, maybe working on his laptop or watching one of his terrible action movies. Instead, I saw him pressed against the kitchen counter with someone else. Not just someone else, my twin sister, my other half. The person who shared my face, my birthday, my entire life until that moment. Emma. They didn't hear me come in at first. They were too lost in whatever moment they were having. His hands were in her hair, hair that looked exactly like mine. Her arms were around his neck, arms that had hugged me through every heartbreak, every triumph, every moment that mattered in my life. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. The bag with his sandwich fell from my hand and hit the floor with a soft thud. That's when they broke apart. That's when they saw me. The look on Emma's face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was panic. Pure, desperate panic. Like she'd been caught doing something she knew would destroy everything, and now it was too late to take it back. Thomas stepped away from her like she was on fire. "Sarah, I can explain." But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process what I was seeing. My sister, my twin sister, the person who knew me better than anyone in the world, the person I'd shared a womb with, shared a bedroom with for 18 years, shared every secret and dream and fear with. She was kissing my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in 3 weeks. Emma took a step toward me, her hands outstretched like she was approaching a wounded animal. "Please," she said, and her voice was shaking. "It's not what you think." That's when something inside me snapped. The shock gave way to rage so pure, so white-hot, that I felt like I might combust right there in Thomas's kitchen. "Not what I think?" My voice came out as a whisper, but it felt like screaming. "Not what I think? I think I just watched my sister kiss my fiancé 3 weeks before my wedding. Tell me, Emma, what part of that am I thinking wrong?" She was crying now, tears streaming down her face that looked exactly like mine. You don't understand. I came here to talk to him about. Get out. The words came from somewhere deep inside me, somewhere I didn't know existed. Both of you just get out of my sight. Thomas tried to speak again. Sarah, please, let us explain. Us? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Us? Since when is there an us between my sister and my fiancé? I pulled the engagement ring off my finger. The ring we'd picked out together at that little jewelry store downtown. The one where the old man had smiled and told us we looked like we were meant to be. I threw it at Thomas's feet and watched it skitter across the hardwood floor. The wedding's off, I said. Everything's off. I turned and walked out of that apartment, leaving behind my engagement ring, my fiancé, my sister, and the life I thought I was going to live. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I just walked away with whatever dignity I had left. Emma followed me to the parking lot. Sarah, wait. Please. You have to listen to me. I turned around, and seeing her face, my face, filled with desperation and tears, made everything hurt even more. I don't have to do anything, Emma. I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to forgive you. I don't have to pretend this didn't happen. But I'm your sister. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. A sister wouldn't do this. A sister wouldn't betray me like this. Whatever we were, it's over now. I got in my car and drove away. That was the last conversation I ever had with Emma. The last time I ever spoke to my twin sister. I told myself I'd forgiven her over the years. I told myself I'd moved on, that I was better off without the drama and the betrayal. But the truth is, I just buried the pain so deep it turned into something uglier. It turned into hate, cold, hard, relentless hate that lived in my chest like a stone for 10 years. 10 years passed, a decade of silence, a decade of avoiding family gatherings where she might be, of hanging up when her number showed up on my phone, of leaving rooms when her name was mentioned. I built an entire life around the absence of my twin sister. I moved to Portland, started fresh, got a job at a marketing firm, made new friends who didn't know I had a twin, dated men who never heard her name. I created this perfectly curated existence where Emma simply didn't exist. And for a while, I convinced myself it was better that way. My mother tried to bridge the gap for years. She asks about you, she'd say during our monthly phone calls. She wants to apologize properly. She wants to explain what really happened that day. I don't want to hear it, Mom. I'd respond every time. Some things can't be explained away. But she's your sister, honey, your twin. You two were inseparable for 29 years. Were. Past tense. That's over now. I became an expert at changing the subject, at deflecting, at building walls so high that even my own mother couldn't scale them when it came to Emma. I told myself I was protecting myself. I told myself I was strong, independent, better off alone than with people who could hurt me so deeply. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was getting ready for work, standing in my bathroom brushing my teeth, when my phone rang. Mom's contact photo lit up the screen, a picture of her smiling in her garden, dirt under her fingernails, and joy in her eyes. "Hi, Mom," I said, still brushing my teeth. "You're up early." The sound that came through the phone wasn't words. It was a sob so deep, so raw, that I knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. "Mom, what's wrong? What happened?" "Sarah." Her voice was broken, barely a whisper. "Oh, sweetheart, I don't know how to tell you this." My blood turned to ice. "Tell me what?" "Mom, you're scaring me." "Emma." Another sob. "Emma was in an accident last night." I stopped brushing my teeth. I stopped breathing. "What kind of accident?" A car accident. She was driving home from work and a truck ran a red light. She didn't. Mom's voice cracked completely. She didn't make it, honey. She's gone. The toothbrush fell from my hand and clattered into the sink. I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, the face that looked exactly like the one that would never look back at me again. Sarah, are you there? I should have cried. I should have screamed. I should have fallen to my knees and grieved for the sister I'd lost. Instead, I felt nothing. A vast, empty nothing that scared me more than any emotion could have. When's the funeral? I heard myself ask. Thursday, 2 o'clock at St. Mary's. Sarah, please. I have to go, Mom. I'll call you later. I hung up the phone and went to work. I sat through meetings and answered emails and pretended my world hadn't just shifted off its axis. When people asked if I was okay, I said I was fine. When my boss suggested I take the day off because I seemed distracted, I insisted I was perfectly capable of doing my job. But that night, alone in my apartment with a glass of wine I couldn't taste, the reality started to sink in. Emma was dead. My twin sister, the person who shared my birthday, my childhood, my DNA, was gone forever. And the last words I'd spoken to her were filled with hate. I didn't cry that night. I couldn't. It was like the tears were frozen somewhere inside me, blocked by 10 years of anger and resentment that had nowhere to go now that the person I'd been angry at was gone. Mom called me Wednesday evening. Will you come to the funeral, sweetheart? Please? I don't know if that's a good idea. She loved you, Sarah. Even at the end, she loved you. She never stopped asking about you, never stopped hoping you'd forgive her someday. Mom, I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm just asking you to come say goodbye. She's your sister, your twin. You came into this world together. The silence stretched between us. Finally, I whispered, "Okay, I'll be there." Thursday morning, I put on a black dress I'd never worn before and drove the 3 hours back to our hometown, the town where Emma and I had grown up, where we'd learned to ride bikes and had our first crushes and dreamed about our futures, the town I'd left 10 years ago and never wanted to see again. St. Mary's was the same as I remembered it, the same stained glass windows, the same wooden pews, the same smell of old books and candle wax. But everything felt different now, smaller somehow and sadder. I slipped into the back row just as the service was starting. I didn't want to sit with family, didn't want to make small talk with relatives who hadn't seen me in a decade. I just wanted to be there, to fulfill the promise I'd made to my mother, and then leave. The church was full. Emma had always been the social one, the one who made friends easily and kept them forever. I recognized faces from high school, from college, from the various jobs she'd had over the years. They all looked devastated. They all looked like they'd lost someone precious. I sat there through the eulogies, through the hymns, through my mother's trembling speech about losing a daughter. I listened to story after story about Emma's kindness, her generosity, her ability to light up a room. People talked about her work at the animal shelter, her volunteer tutoring at the library, the way she'd drop everything to help a friend in need. They painted a picture of someone I didn't recognize, someone good and pure and selfless, someone who bore no resemblance to the person who had betrayed me in Thomas's kitchen 10 years ago. I felt like an imposter sitting there, like I didn't deserve to grieve for someone I'd hated for so long. When the service ended and people began filing out, I stayed in my pew. I watched as they carried her casket out of the church, watched as my mother followed behind it, with tears streaming down her face. I should have left then. I should have gotten in my car and driven back to Portland and tried to forget this day ever happened. Instead, I found myself walking to the cemetery. I found myself standing at the edge of the crowd as they lowered my sister into the ground. After everyone else had gone, after the last casserole had been delivered to my mother's house and the last condolence had been offered, I drove to our childhood home. Mom was in the kitchen, surrounded by flowers and sympathy cards, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen her. "I'm glad you came," she said, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like her familiar perfume and grief. "I should go," I said. "I have work tomorrow." "Stay for dinner, please? I made too much food anyway, and I could use the company." I stayed. We ate leftover casserole in silence, neither of us knowing what to say. After dinner, Mom went to lie down, exhausted by the day and the weight of her loss. I found myself wandering through the house, looking at photos of Emma and me as children. We were identical in every way. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes, same mischievous smile. In picture after picture, we were inseparable. Arms around each other, matching outfits, finishing each other's sentences. That's when I found myself climbing the stairs to our old bedroom. Mom had kept it exactly the same as the day we moved out. Twin beds with matching pink comforters, posters of boy bands and movie stars still taped to the walls, books and trinkets from our childhood scattered on the shelves. Emma's side of the room looked lived in, like she'd been spending time here recently. There were fresh flowers on her nightstand, a book lying open on her bed, clothes in the hamper, and on her desk, impossible to miss, was a manila folder with my name written on it in her careful, familiar handwriting. My hands were shaking as I reached for that folder. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk away, to leave whatever was inside unread and unknown. But I couldn't. After 10 years of silence, after sitting through her funeral and watching them lower her into the ground, I needed to know what she'd wanted to tell me. I sat down on her bed and opened the folder. The first thing I saw was a letter, dated just 3 days after that horrible day in Thomas's apartment. The handwriting was shaky, emotional, nothing like Emma's usual neat script. "Dear Sarah," it began, "I know you probably won't read this, but I have to try. I have to tell you what really happened, even if you never believe me." I stopped reading. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I wasn't sure I was ready for this, wasn't sure I wanted to know what Emma's version of events was. But I'd come this far. I'd buried my sister today. I owed it to both of us to read what she'd written. "I didn't kiss Thomas. He kissed me. You walked in before I could explain." The page slipped from my hands. I stared at those words, words that cracked something open inside me that had been sealed shut for 10 years, words that changed everything. "That sentence," I whispered to the empty room, "that sentence changes everything." I picked up the letter with trembling fingers and kept reading. "I went to his apartment that day to talk to him about your birthday surprise. You remember how you always said you wanted to renew your vows somewhere tropical someday? I was planning a surprise honeymoon to Hawaii. I'd been working with a travel agent for weeks, trying to coordinate everything with your work schedule. Thomas was supposed to help me pick out activities you'd love. When I got there, he'd been drinking. He was upset about something at work, stressed about the wedding. I don't know. He started talking about how lucky he was to have you, how beautiful you were, how much he loved you. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, 'God, you look exactly like her.' Before I could say anything, before I could step back, he grabbed me and kissed me. I was so shocked. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was trying to push him away when you walked in. I know how it looked. I know what you thought you saw. But I swear to you, Sarah, on everything we shared as children, on every secret we kept, and every promise we made. I was not kissing your fiancé. He was kissing me, and I was trying to figure out how to stop it without making everything worse. I wanted to run after you, to explain, but Thomas grabbed my arm and begged me not to. He said he'd tell you himself, that he'd explain it was all his fault. He said he'd make it right. I believed him. I thought he'd call you that night and explain what really happened. But he didn't, did he? He let you think I betrayed you. He let you hate me for something I didn't do. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder to explain. I'm sorry I let you walk away thinking I'd stabbed you in the back. I'm sorry I was such a coward that I let Thomas convince me he'd handle it. I love you. I've always loved you. You're my twin, my other half, my best friend. Losing you is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Worse than losing Thomas. Worse than calling off your wedding. Worse than anything. Please call me. Please let me explain in person. I need my sister back. Love, Emma. I set the letter down and reached for the next one, then the next, then the next. The folder was thick with letters, dozens of them, spanning 10 years. Letters Emma had written but never sent. Letters that chronicled her attempts to reach out, her pain at my silence, her desperate hope that someday I'd forgive her. Some were short notes, others were pages long. All of them were filled with love and regret, and a longing that made my chest ache. Sarah, read one from 6 months after the incident. I tried calling again today. Your number's been disconnected. Mom says you moved to Portland and don't want any contact with family. I understand why you're angry, but please don't punish Mom for my mistakes. She misses you. We all do. Another from a year later. I saw Thomas at the grocery store today. He's engaged to someone else now, a redhead named Kelly. When he saw me, he couldn't look me in the eye. He knows what he did to us, how his cowardice destroyed our relationship. I wanted to tell him what I thought of him, but what would be the point? The damage is already done. And another from 3 years after. I got promoted at work today. Regional manager. You'd be proud of me. I know how hard you worked to get that same position at your old job. I wanted to call and tell you, but I know you wouldn't answer. I wanted to celebrate with my twin sister, but I guess those days are over. I miss sharing good news with you. I miss sharing everything with you. The letters got longer and more emotional as the years passed. Emma wrote about holidays spent without me, birthdays celebrated alone, family gatherings where my absence was a constant presence. Christmas isn't the same without you, she wrote in one from 5 years ago. Mom pretends everything's fine, but I can see how much she misses having both her daughters together. She still sets a place for you at dinner, just in case you change your mind and come home. I keep that tradition alive, too, hoping that someday you'll walk through the door and sit in your old chair. Some letters were angry, Emma's frustration and hurt bleeding through her usually careful words. It's been 5 years, Sarah. 5 years since you've spoken to me. 5 years since you've given me a chance to explain. How long are you going to punish me for something I didn't even do? Thomas was the one who kissed me. Thomas was the one who let you believe I betrayed you. Yet you cut me out of your life and let him off the hook. How is that fair? But even in her anger, love shone through. I don't care if you're mad at me forever. I don't care if you never forgive me. I just want you to be happy. I want you to find someone who deserves you, someone who won't put you in impossible positions. I want you to have the life you dreamed of when we were kids, even if I'm not part of it. There were letters about her job at the animal shelter, about the dogs and cats she'd helped find homes, letters about the men she'd dated and why none of them worked out. "They're not you," she wrote in one, "not my other half. How do you replace a relationship that started in the womb?" Letters about therapy sessions where she'd tried to work through the guilt and shame of losing me. Letters about the dreams she still had where we were kids again, planning adventures and sharing secrets. "I dream about you all the time," she wrote in one from 2 years ago. "We're always children in these dreams, 7 or 8 years old, lying in our twin beds after lights out, whispering about everything and nothing. You're telling me about the boy you have a crush on in Mrs. Peterson's class, and I'm telling you about the story I'm writing about twin princesses who saved their kingdom together. We're giggling and planning tomorrow's adventure, and everything is perfect and simple and right. Then I wake up, and I remember that we're adults now. I remember that you hate me. I remember that you've built a life that doesn't include me, and the loss hits me all over again. It's like losing you fresh every single morning." The letters became a window into 10 years of my sister's life that I'd missed. 10 years where she'd grown and changed and struggled and triumphed, all without me there to witness it. 10 years where she carried the weight of our broken relationship, never knowing if I'd ever forgive her, never knowing if I'd ever come home. "I volunteer at the Literacy Center now," she wrote in one from last year, "teaching adults to read. There's this woman, Maria, who's learning English. She tells me about her twin sister back in El Salvador, how much she misses her, how they were separated when Maria came to America, and now she doesn't know if she'll ever see her again. I told her about you, about how we used to finish each other's sentences and share clothes and stay up all night talking about our dreams, about how I lost you too, just in a different way." Maria looked at me with such sadness and said, "But your sister is alive. You could call her right now if you wanted to." She's right, of course. You are alive. You're out there somewhere, living your life, and I could reach out. But I've tried so many times, and you've made it clear you don't want to hear from me. So I stay here, missing you, writing letters I'll never send, hoping that someday you'll find your way back to me. I was crying now, full, ugly sobs that I'd been holding back for 10 years. 10 years of anger and hurt and stubborn pride, and all the while Emma had been writing these letters. All the while she'd been loving me from a distance, hoping I'd come home. But there were more letters, so many more. "I saw you today," read one that made my blood run cold. "You were buying flowers at Miller's Market downtown. Sunflowers, your favorite. You looked beautiful, Sarah. Older, obviously, but still so beautiful. Your hair is shorter now, and you were wearing this blue dress I'd never seen before. You looked peaceful, content, like you'd built a good life for yourself." I almost said hi. I was standing 3 aisles over, and I almost walked up to you and said your name. But then I remembered how angry you were the last time we spoke, how you told me to get out of your sight. I didn't want to ruin your peaceful afternoon. I didn't want to bring pain into what looked like a happy moment. So I watched you buy your sunflowers and walk to your car and drive away. And I stood there in the cereal aisle and cried like a child who'd lost her best friend. Because that's what I am, isn't it? A child who lost her best friend and never figured out how to get her back. I remembered that day. It was my birthday, my 35th. I'd been buying flowers for my apartment, treating myself to something beautiful because I was spending another birthday alone. I'd felt someone watching me, but when I looked around, I didn't see anyone familiar. She'd been there. Emma had been 3 aisles away, wanting to wish me happy birthday, wanting to hug me and ask about my life, and I'd been completely oblivious, lost in my own world of carefully constructed independence. Today is your birthday, the letter continued. 35. I wanted to call and sing to you like we used to when we were kids. Remember how we'd wake up extra early and sing happy birthday to each other at exactly 6:37 a.m., the time we were born? You first, then me, 2 minutes later. I woke up at 6:37 this morning and sang to myself in the mirror. Happy birthday to us, I thought, even though you probably forgot it was my birthday too, even though we haven't celebrated together in 10 years. I bought you a gift anyway, a journal with sunflowers on the cover. I know how much you used to love writing in high school, how you talked about keeping a diary someday. It's sitting on my dresser now, wrapped in yellow paper. I'll probably never give it to you, but I bought it anyway. I love you, Sarah. I love you on your birthday and every other day. I love you even though you hate me. I love you even though you've erased me from your life. I'll love you until the day I die, and probably beyond that too. Happy birthday, twin sister. I hope 35 brings you everything you've ever wanted. The date on that letter was 3 months ago. 3 months before Emma died in that car crash. 3 months before I sat in a church pew and listened to strangers talk about the wonderful woman she'd become. I kept reading, even though each letter felt like a knife to the chest. Letters about the men she dated and lost, because she compared them all to the relationship we used to have. Letters about holidays and family gatherings, where she'd sit in the corner and remember Christmases, when we'd stayed up all night wrapping presents for each other. Letters about career successes that felt hollow, because she had no twin sister to celebrate with. I got promoted to director today, she wrote in one from 8 months ago. The youngest director in the organization's history. 20 years ago, when we were planning our futures in our childhood bedroom, this is exactly the kind of success we dreamed about. Do you remember? We were going to conquer the world together, my brilliant twin sister and me. I wanted to call you so badly today. I wanted to hear your voice tell me you were proud of me. I wanted to celebrate the way we used to, with cheap champagne and terrible takeout Chinese food, and hours of laughing until our stomachs hurt. Instead, I went home to an empty apartment and ate leftover pizza alone. I raised a toast to the air and said, "This one's for you, Sarah, wherever you are." It felt pathetic and sad and lonely, but it also felt right. Because even though you're not in my life anymore, you're still part of every good thing that happens to me. I became the person I am because I had you as my other half for 29 years. I learned to be brave because you were brave. I learned to dream big because you taught me that twins could do anything together. Even though we're apart now, those lessons you taught me are still guiding my life. I just wish you knew that. I wish you knew how much of my success belongs to you, too. There were letters about therapy, about the work she'd done to understand what had happened between us and her role in it. Dr. Martinez says I need to stop taking responsibility for your choice to cut me off. She wrote in one from 6 months ago. She says I've apologized enough, explained enough, tried to reach out enough. She says at some point, I have to accept that you've made your decision and move on with my life. But how do you move on from losing half of yourself? How do you accept that the person who knew you better than anyone else in the world has decided you're not worth forgiving? How do you build a life around a Sarah-shaped hole that will never be filled? I told Dr. Martinez that I can't move on. I won't move on. Because moving on means accepting that you'll never be my sister again. And I'm not ready to accept that. I may never be ready to accept that. She says I'm stuck in the grief stage of our relationship ending, but I don't think our relationship has ended, Sarah. I think it's just paused. I think someday you'll realize that what happened with Thomas wasn't my fault. I think someday you'll miss me enough to pick up the phone. I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll wait forever if I have to. The letters became more desperate as they got more recent. Emma's handwriting got messier, more urgent, like she was running out of time. I had a dream about you last night, she wrote in one dated just 2 months before she died. We were in our old bedroom, getting ready for prom. You were wearing that blue dress Mom bought you, the one with the sparkles that made you feel like a princess. I was in the pink one that matched. We were doing each other's makeup and hair like always, laughing about the boys who'd asked us to dance, planning our grand entrance. Everything was exactly like it used to be, easy and natural and right. Then I woke up, and the missing you hit me like a physical blow. It's been almost 10 years, Sarah. 10 years since I've heard your voice or seen your face or shared a moment with my twin sister. 10 years of carrying this guilt and shame and desperate hope that someday you'll forgive me. I'm tired, Sarah. I'm so tired of missing you. I'm tired of writing letters I'll never send and celebrating milestones alone and pretending I'm okay when people ask about my family. I'm tired of explaining to new friends that I have a twin sister, but we don't speak. I'm tired of the pitying looks and the awkward silences that follow. But I'm not tired enough to give up. I'll never be tired enough to stop loving you. I'll never be tired enough to stop hoping you'll come home. The last letter in the folder was dated just 1 week before Emma died. The handwriting was barely recognizable, shaky and urgent and desperate. Sarah, it began, I don't know why I'm writing this. I don't know if you'll ever read it, but I have this strange feeling like I'm running out of time, like I need to say everything I've been holding back, just in case. If something happens to me, if I die tomorrow or next week or next year, I need you to know that every single day of the last 10 years, I've regretted what happened in Thomas's apartment, not because I did anything wrong, but because I didn't fight harder for you, because I let you walk away thinking I'd betrayed you, because I was too much of a coward to keep trying when you made it clear you didn't want to hear from me. I should have shown up at your apartment every day until you listened to me. I should have called your work, your friends, your new address in Portland. I should have made a scene, caused a drama, forced you to hear the truth instead of letting you live with Thomas's lies. But I respected your wishes. I stayed away like you asked me to. And maybe that was the biggest mistake of all. If you're reading this, it probably means I'm gone. It probably means Mom found these letters and decided you needed to know what really happened. I hope she was right. I hope knowing the truth brings you some peace, even if it's too late for us. I want you to know that I never blamed you for hating me. I understood why you couldn't forgive what you thought I'd done. If I'd walked in and seen you kissing my fiancé, I probably would have reacted the same way. The difference is, I would have given you a chance to explain, but maybe that's just because I loved you more than I loved anyone else in the world. Thomas and we talked once. About a year after you left town, I ran into him at the coffee shop on Main Street. He was with Kelly, his new fiancée. When he saw me, he tried to leave, but I followed him outside. You have to tell her the truth, I said. Sarah deserves to know what really happened. He looked me dead in the eye and said, What truth? You kissed me, Emma. You came on to me, and I was too weak to stop it. Sarah knows exactly what happened. I was so shocked I couldn't speak for a minute. Then I said, That's not what happened, and you know it. You kissed me. You grabbed me and kissed me, and I was trying to get away when she walked in. He shrugged like it didn't matter, like my entire relationship with you didn't matter. That's not how I remember it, he said. And since Sarah isn't speaking to you, I guess she believes my version. That's when I realized he'd been lying to you all along. That's when I understood why you'd never given me a chance to explain. Because the man you trusted, the man you were going to marry, had told you I was the villain in our story. I wanted to drive to Portland right then and tell you everything, but what would have been the point? You'd already chosen to believe him over me. You'd already decided I was capable of that kind of betrayal. And maybe, after 10 years of silence, I was. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry Thomas put us in that impossible position. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger in that moment. I'm sorry I let you walk away without fighting harder for the truth. I'm sorry for 10 years of letters you never read and phone calls you never answered. Most of all, I'm sorry that we wasted so much time. I'm sorry that whatever happens next, we'll never get those 10 years back. We'll never get another chance to be twins, to be sisters, to be each other's person. But I want you to know that losing you was the hardest thing I've ever been through. Harder than losing Thomas, harder than canceling a wedding, harder than anything else life has thrown at me. Because you weren't just my sister. You were my other half, my twin, my best friend, the person who knew me better than I knew myself. I love you, Sarah. I've loved you every single day of our lives, even the days when you hated me. I'll love you after I'm gone, wherever I am. And if there's any way for souls to find each other after death, I'll find you. I'll wait for you. And maybe, in whatever comes next, we can be twins again. Your sister always, Emma P.S. The journal I bought you for your birthday is in my closet. Yellow wrapping paper, top shelf. I hope you'll use it to write your story. Our story. The real story of what happened to the twins who loved each other so much they couldn't survive being apart. I sat there in Emma's childhood bedroom, surrounded by letters that chronicled 10 years of love and loss and desperate hope. 10 years where my sister had carried the truth alone, where she'd written letter after letter, trying to explain what I'd been too stubborn and hurt to hear. I thought about all the times I'd hung up when she called, all the emails I'd deleted without reading, all the birthday cards I'd thrown away, unopened. I thought about the life I'd built in Portland, the life that was supposed to be so much better without the drama of family complications. But it wasn't better. It was smaller, lonelier, incomplete in a way I'd never been able to admit, even to myself. Emma had been telling the truth all along. Thomas had kissed her, not the other way around. And then he'd lied to me about it, let me believe my own sister had betrayed me. He'd destroyed our relationship to protect himself, and I'd been too blinded by hurt and anger to see it. I picked up the first letter again and read those words that had started it all. I didn't kiss Thomas. He kissed me. You walked in before I could explain. The truth. So simple, so devastating, so life-changing. And I'd been too proud to hear it for 10 years. As I sat there surrounded by Emma's words, I realized there was one more letter I hadn't read yet. It was at the very bottom of the folder, separate from the others, written on different paper, nicer paper, the kind you'd use for something important. The envelope was sealed with "For Sarah, if something happens to me," written on the front in Emma's careful handwriting. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a letter dated just 3 days before she died. 3 days before that truck ran the red light and took my sister away from me forever. My dearest Sarah, it began, and I could hear her voice in every word. If you're reading this, then the worst has happened. and I'm gone. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm being dramatic and paranoid, and that when I'm 80 years old, I'll find this letter in my papers and laugh at myself for being so morbid. But something's been telling me to write this down, to make sure you know everything, just in case. I've been thinking a lot about death lately. Not in a suicidal way. Please don't think that. Just in the way that people sometimes do when they realize how precious and fragile life really is. Maybe it's because I'm 39 now, almost 40. Maybe it's because losing you taught me how quickly everything you love can disappear. Or maybe it's because I had a dream last week that felt more like a premonition. We were kids again, maybe 6 or 7 years old. We were playing in the backyard behind Mom's house, the one with the big oak tree and the tire swing. You were wearing that yellow sundress Mom made us for Easter, the one with the tiny flowers embroidered on the collar. You were laughing, running toward the tree swing, and you called over your shoulder, "Come on, Emma, let's fly." But when I tried to follow you, I couldn't move. My feet were stuck to the ground, and I watched you swing higher and higher until you disappeared into the clouds. I woke up with tears on my face and this overwhelming need to tell you everything I've been carrying in my heart for 10 years. So here it is, Sarah. Everything. I never stopped missing you. Not for a single day. People always ask me what it's like to be a twin, and I used to tell them it was like having a built-in best friend, someone who understood you without words. But that was before I lost you. Now I know what it's really like to be a twin. It's like having half your soul walking around in the world separate from you. When you cut me off, I didn't just lose my sister. I lost half of myself. Do you remember when we were 12 and you broke your arm falling off your bike? I felt it happen. I was sitting in math class, 3 grades away from you, and suddenly my arm started throbbing. I knew something was wrong with you before the teacher came to get me from class. That's what being twins was like for us, connected in ways that defied explanation. When you shut me out of your life, that connection didn't disappear. It just became painful. For 10 years, I've felt your absence like a phantom limb. I've reached for my phone to call you when something good happened, then remembered you wouldn't answer. I've started to tell you jokes, then realized you weren't there to laugh. I've had conversations with you in my head every single day, imagining what you'd say, how you'd react, what advice you'd give me. I know you probably think I moved on. I know 10 years seems like a long time to hold on to hope, but you have to understand, you can't just replace a twin. You can't find another person who shared a womb with you, who learned to talk at the same time as you, who knows all your secrets and fears and dreams. You were irreplaceable, Sarah. You still are. I tried dating seriously a few times over the years. There was David, the teacher I met at the literacy center. He was kind and funny and patient with my baggage. We dated for 2 years, and he even proposed. But when he asked me to marry him, all I could think about was how you wouldn't be my maid of honor, how you wouldn't help me pick out my dress or plan my bachelorette party, or cry with me on my wedding morning. How the person who was supposed to be my other half wouldn't be there for the most important day of my life. I said no. He deserved better than someone who was mourning a relationship that had been over for years. He deserved someone who could give him her whole heart, not just the half that you didn't take with you when you left. There was also Michael, the veterinarian from the animal shelter. He was everything I thought I wanted: successful, compassionate, completely unconnected to my past. But on our 6-month anniversary, he surprised me with a weekend trip to Portland. He thought it would be romantic to visit the city where my estranged sister lived, maybe even encourage me to reach out to you. I spent the entire weekend looking for you in crowds, wondering if I'd see your face on the street, hoping and dreading it in equal measure. Michael thought I was being distant and moody. He couldn't understand why I wouldn't just call you, why I wouldn't try to repair what he saw as a simple family argument. How bad could it have been? He asked me on the drive home. She's your twin sister. Surely you can work it out. I tried to explain that it wasn't that simple, that too much time had passed, that you'd made it clear you didn't want me in your life. But how do you explain to someone who's never had a twin what it feels like to lose half of yourself? How do you make them understand that some wounds are too deep to heal? We broke up a month later. He said I was still in love with someone else, and in a way, he was right. I was still in love with my sister, still in love with the relationship we used to have, the life we used to share, the future we'd planned together. I never stopped believing that someday you'd forgive me, never stopped hoping that someday you'd miss me enough to call. Even when years passed without a word, even when Mom stopped trying to convince you to come home for holidays, even when I had to accept that you'd really built a life without me, I still believed that our story wasn't over. Maybe that makes me pathetic. Maybe I should have moved on, found new relationships to replace what we had. But you can't replace a twin, Sarah. You can't find another person who knew you before you were born, who shared every important moment of your childhood, who understood you in ways that no one else ever could. I kept hoping because what we had was worth hoping for. What we lost was worth grieving forever. I need to tell you about the day you saw me at Miller's Market buying those sunflowers. You wrote about it in that journal I found in my closet, the one with your name on it, the one I mentioned in my other letters. Yes, I found it. I'm sorry for reading it, but after you died, I needed to understand how you'd been feeling these past 10 years. You wrote that you felt like someone was watching you that day, but you couldn't figure out who. You wrote that you had this strange urge to buy extra flowers, like you were buying them for someone else too. You were, in a way. You were buying them for both of us, for the birthday we should have been celebrating together. I stood in that cereal aisle and watched you move through the store, and I memorized everything. The way you held your shoulders a little higher than you used to, like you'd learned to be more confident. The way you smiled at the cashier, genuine and warm. The way you took extra time choosing the perfect bouquet, like it really mattered. You looked happy, Sarah, not completely happy. I could see the sadness around your eyes, the careful way you held yourself like you were protecting something fragile inside. But you looked like you'd built a good life. You looked like you'd found ways to be okay without me. I was proud of you and heartbroken at the same time. Proud that you'd survived losing your twin sister and built something beautiful anyway. Heartbroken that I wasn't part of that beautiful life. I almost followed you to your car. I almost called your name and ran to you and threw my arms around you like we were kids again. But then I remembered how angry you were the last time we spoke. How you told me to get out of your sight. I remembered 10 years of unreturned phone calls and deleted emails. I remembered that you'd made your choice, and it didn't include me, so I let you drive away. I watched through the store window as you loaded your sunflowers into your car and pulled out of the parking lot, and I whispered, "Happy birthday, twin sister," to the empty air. I went home that night and wrote you a letter I never sent. I told you about seeing you, about how beautiful you looked, about how much I missed celebrating our birthday together. I told you about the gift I'd bought that you'd never receive and the cake I'd eat alone in your honor. I kept that letter with all the others, hundreds of letters now, spanning 10 years of loving you from a distance. Love letters to my twin sister, the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world and chose to forget I existed. I need you to know that I never blamed you for staying away. I understood your anger, even if I didn't deserve it. Thomas did an unspeakable thing when he lied to you about what happened in his apartment. He took our trust, our love, our unbreakable bond, and he used it as a weapon against us. He destroyed something precious to save himself, and I've hated him for it every single day since. But I never hated you. Even when I was angry, even when I felt abandoned and forgotten, even when I wanted to scream at you for refusing to hear the truth, I never stopped loving you. You're my twin sister. You're part of me in ways that go deeper than choice or circumstance. Loving you isn't something I do, it's something I am. If I die tomorrow, if this letter is the last thing I ever write, I want you to know that you were the best part of my life. Growing up with you, being your twin, sharing those 29 years before everything went wrong. That was the greatest gift I've ever received. You taught me how to be brave when I was scared. You showed me how to dream bigger than our small town, how to believe I could become anything I wanted. You were my first best friend, my constant companion, my other half in every way that mattered. Even losing you taught me something valuable. It taught me how much love I was capable of carrying. It taught me that some bonds are so strong they survive even betrayal and silence and years of separation. It taught me that twins don't stop being twins just because they stop speaking. I hope you found love in your life, Sarah. Real love. The kind that sees all of you and chooses to stay anyway. I hope you found friends who make you laugh until your stomach hurts. I hope you found work that fulfills you and adventures that thrill you and moments of pure joy that make you grateful to be alive. I hope you found everything we used to dream about when we were kids lying in our twin beds, planning our futures in whispered conversations after lights out. And I hope that somewhere in that beautiful life you've built, there's still a small space for your twin sister. I hope that sometimes, when you see sunflowers or hear our favorite song or smell Mom's chocolate chip cookies, you think of me with love instead of anger. I hope you remember the good times, and there were so many good times, more than you remember the end. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. It means I'll never get the chance to hug you again, or tell you in person how sorry I am, or hear you say you forgive me. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some love is meant to exist in silence, in the space between people who can't find their way back to each other. Maybe this is enough, you knowing the truth, you understanding that I loved you every single day of our lives, you realizing that losing you was the greatest tragedy of my existence. Take care of yourself, Sarah. Take care of the half of me that lives in you. And if there's any way for souls to find each other after death, I'll be waiting for you. I'll wait as long as it takes, and when you're ready, we can be twins again. Until then, know that you were loved, completely, unconditionally, forever loved. Your sister, always and always, Emma P.S. There's something else in the folder. Look for the yellow envelope. It's important. I set the letter down with shaking hands. My face was wet with tears I didn't remember shedding, and my chest felt like it might crack open from the weight of 10 years of love I'd refused to see. Emma was gone. My twin sister was gone, and I'd spent her last decade on Earth hating her for something she didn't do. I'd wasted 10 years we could have had together, 10 years of birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesday afternoons, 10 years of being each other's person, of finishing each other's sentences, of being the twins we were born to be. I reached for the yellow envelope she'd mentioned in her postscript. Inside was a smaller piece of paper with an address written in her handwriting and a note that said, "Go here, ask for Maria. Tell her you're Emma's twin sister. She has something for you." I sat there in Emma's bedroom for what felt like hours, holding that address and trying to process everything I'd learned. My sister had spent 10 years loving me from a distance, writing letters I'd never read, carrying the truth I'd been too stubborn to hear. She'd built a life around the absence of her twin sister, and I'd done the same thing. Both of us incomplete, both of us grieving for the same lost relationship. The address was for the literacy center where Emma had volunteered. Maria, the woman Emma had written about, the one who was learning English and missed her own twin sister in El Salvador. What could she possibly have for me? I looked around Emma's room one more time, really looked at it, not just seeing the furniture and decorations, but understanding what they meant. This wasn't just a childhood bedroom that Mom had preserved out of nostalgia. This was a shrine to the person Emma had been before everything went wrong. But more than that, it was evidence of the person she'd become after I left. The fresh flowers, the recent books, the clothes in the hamper. Emma had been coming here regularly. This had been her refuge, the place she came when she missed me most, the place where she could pretend we were still children, still twins, still each other's whole world. I picked up a photo from her nightstand. It was one I'd never seen before. Emma and me at our college graduation, arms around each other, both of us grinning at the camera. We looked so happy, so proud, so completely connected. I tried to remember that day, tried to recall feeling anything but pure joy at sharing that milestone with my twin sister. That's when it hit me, really hit me, what I'd done. I hadn't just cut Emma out of my life. I'd erased 29 years of love and connection and shared history. I'd thrown away the most important relationship I'd ever had because I was too proud and too hurt to listen to the truth. I thought about all the ways I'd made reconciliation impossible, changing my phone number, blocking her email, moving to Portland without leaving a forwarding address. Every time Emma had tried to reach out, I'd built another wall. Every letter she'd written, every call she'd made, every birthday card she'd sent, I'd refused it all. I'd told myself I was protecting myself, that I was strong and independent and better off alone. But the truth was, I was a coward. I was so afraid of being hurt again that I'd chosen to live with a constant ache instead of risking another betrayal. And Emma, my sweet, loving, loyal twin sister, had carried the weight of my silence for 10 years. She'd blamed herself for my choice to stay away. She'd spent a decade writing letters to someone who'd made it clear she didn't want to hear from her. I whispered to the empty room, all this time, I thought she ruined my life, but she was just trying to fix it. The worst part was realizing how easily it could have been different. If I'd answered just one phone call, if I'd read just one email, if I'd opened just one birthday card, if I'd given Emma 5 minutes to explain what really happened that day in Thomas's apartment, everything would have been different. We could have had 10 more years together. 10 years of birthdays and holidays and family dinners. 10 years of sharing good news and bad news and all the ordinary moments that make up a life. 10 years of being twins, being sisters, being each other's person. Instead, I'd spent 10 years building a life that was deliberately incomplete. A life without family complications, without the mess and drama of deep relationships. A safe, controlled, lonely life that I'd convinced myself was better than the alternative. But it wasn't better. It was smaller, emptier, missing the person who'd known me longer than anyone else in the world. I thought about all the milestones Emma had written about, the promotions and birthdays and holidays she'd celebrated alone, all the times she'd wanted to call me with good news or bad news, or just to hear my voice, all the times she'd set a place for me at family dinners, hoping I'd change my mind and come home. I thought about the men she dated and lost because she couldn't love them completely when half her heart was still waiting for her twin sister to forgive her. The proposals she'd turned down because she couldn't imagine getting married without me there. The life she'd put on hold because she was still hoping I'd come back. I thought about that day at the grocery store when she'd seen me buying sunflowers, how she'd stood 3 aisles away, wanting to say hello, wanting to wish me happy birthday, but afraid to approach because of how angry I'd been the last time we spoke. How she'd watched me buy flowers for our birthday and driven home alone to eat cake in my honor. I thought about the journal she'd bought me, still wrapped in yellow paper, still sitting in her closet, still waiting for a reconciliation that would never come. I thought about her last letter, written 3 days before she died, full of love and forgiveness and desperate hope that somehow, someday, we could be twins again. And I thought about the truck that ran the red light and took her away before I could apologize, before I could tell her I was sorry, before I could say that I loved her too, that I'd missed her every single day, that cutting her out of my life had been the biggest mistake I'd ever made. I was crying again, ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere so deep I didn't know it existed. 10 years of grief I'd been carrying without even realizing it. 10 years of missing my twin sister and convincing myself I was better off without her. The sun was starting to set outside Emma's bedroom window. I'd been sitting there for hours, reading letters and processing a decade of misunderstanding. Mom would be wondering where I was, would probably be worried that I'd left without saying goodbye. But I couldn't leave, not yet. Not until I'd read every letter, understood every word, fully grasped the magnitude of what I'd lost and what Emma had sacrificed for my stubborn pride. I picked up the folder again and found one more letter I'd missed. It was shorter than the others, dated just 6 months ago. Sarah, it read. I dreamed about our wedding last night, not the one that never happened, a different one. We were older in this dream, maybe 45 or 50. You were wearing a beautiful white dress and walking down the aisle toward someone who loved you completely. I was your maid of honor, standing at the altar in a pale blue dress, crying happy tears. In the dream, we'd reconciled somehow. Years had passed, but we'd found our way back to each other. We were twins again, sisters again, best friends again. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the marriage, I stood up and said, I object to how long it took my sister to find someone who deserves her. Everyone laughed, including you. Your fiancé. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel how much he loved you. Smiled and said, Don't worry, I plan to spend the rest of my life making up for lost time. It was such a beautiful dream, Sarah. So real, I could feel the tears on my face, could hear the music playing, could smell the flowers in your bouquet. When I woke up, I felt peaceful for the first time in years. Like somehow, in some other timeline, we'd figured it out. We'd found our way back to each other. I hope that timeline exists somewhere. I hope there's a version of our story where we never lost 10 years, where we grew old together as sisters and twins and best friends, where I got to be your maid of honor and you got to be mine, where we celebrated each other's successes and comforted each other through failures and shared all the ordinary moments that make up a life. Maybe that's what heaven is. All the love we couldn't express, all the relationships we couldn't repair, all the words we never got to say. Maybe somewhere, in some better place, we're still twins. Maybe we always will be. I love you, dream sister. I love you, real sister. I love you wherever you are. I set the letter down and closed my eyes. I could picture that dream wedding, could see myself in white walking toward someone who loved me enough to wait for me to heal, could see Emma in pale blue, crying happy tears, making jokes to hide how emotional she was. It was such a beautiful dream, such a beautiful life we could have had if I'd been brave enough to forgive her, if I'd been wise enough to hear the truth, if I'd been strong enough to love her more than I hated what I thought she'd done. But that dream was gone now. Emma was gone, and I was left with nothing but letters and regrets, and the terrible knowledge that I'd spent 10 years hating the person who loved me most in the world. I thought about Thomas, how easily he'd lied to me, how quickly he'd moved on to someone else, how he'd destroyed our relationship to protect himself. I thought about how I'd trusted his version of events over my own twin sisters, how I'd believed the worst about the person who'd never given me reason to doubt her before that day. I thought about all the signs I'd ignored, how out of character it would have been for Emma to betray me, how she'd tried to explain before I cut her off, how she'd kept trying to reach out even when I made it clear I didn't want to hear from her. I thought about how different our lives would have been if I'd given her 5 minutes to tell me the truth, if I'd listened to her explanation instead of walking away in anger, if I'd chosen love over pride, forgiveness over punishment, hope over hate. But I couldn't change the past. I couldn't bring Emma back. I couldn't undo 10 years of silence and separation. All I could do was honor her memory by finally accepting the truth she'd been trying to tell me all along. I stood up from Emma's bed and looked around her room one more time. Then I walked to her closet and found the journal she'd mentioned. Yellow wrapping paper, top shelf, just like she'd said. I unwrapped it carefully, like it was the most precious thing in the world. It was beautiful, leather-bound with sunflowers embossed on the cover. The first page had an inscription in Emma's handwriting, for my twin sister, who always had the best stories to tell. I hope someday you'll write ours. I held that journal to my chest and felt something crack open inside me. Not painful this time, but healing. Like a door I'd kept locked for 10 years was finally opening again. I had a story to write, our story. The real story of what happened to the twins who loved each other so much they couldn't survive being apart. The story Emma had been waiting 10 years for me to tell. But first, I had to go see Maria. I drove to the literacy center as the last light was fading from the sky. It was a small building downtown, the kind of place Emma would have chosen to volunteer. Practical, unpretentious, focused on helping people improve their lives. Maria was there, just like Emma's note had said she would be. She was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair, probably in her 50s. When I told her I was Emma's twin sister, her face lit up with recognition and sorrow. "Ah, Sarah," she said in accented English. "Emma told me so much about you. She said you looked exactly like her. But seeing you," she shook her head, "it's like seeing a ghost." "She said you had something for me?" Maria nodded and led me to a small office in the back of the building. She opened a desk drawer and pulled out an envelope with my name on it. "Emma brought this to me 2 weeks before she died," Maria explained. "She said if anything ever happened to her, I should make sure you got it. She said you might come looking for her someday, and when you did, I should give you this." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a key and a note that said, "Storage Unit 47, Sunshine Storage on Maple Street. Everything I wanted to give you but couldn't." Maria walked me to the door. As I was leaving, she caught my arm gently. "She missed you every day," she said. "Every day for the 2 years I knew her. She talked about her twin sister who lived far away. She said losing you was like losing half her soul. I nodded, unable to speak. But she also said something else, Maria continued. She said that even though you were apart, she could still feel you sometimes, that twins are connected in ways that distance can't break. She said she knew you missed her too, even if you couldn't admit it. I thanked Maria and drove to the storage unit. Number 47 was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, but it was packed with things meant for me. Birthday gifts for every year I'd been gone, Christmas presents still wrapped in festive paper, photo albums full of pictures from our childhood, copies of every letter she'd written but never sent, and in the center of it all, a box labeled for Sarah's wedding day. I opened it with trembling hands and found the most beautiful necklace I'd ever seen. Our grandmother's pearls, the ones Emma and I had fought over as children, the ones Mom had promised would go to whichever of us got married first. There was a note attached. For my twin sister's wedding day, whenever that may be, may you marry someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved, completely, unconditionally, and without reservation. Love, your sister always. I sat there in that storage unit surrounded by 10 years of love I'd refused to accept, and I finally understood the full magnitude of what I'd lost. Not just my sister, but the chance to make things right, the chance to apologize, the chance to tell her I loved her too. I drove to the cemetery as the first stars were appearing in the sky. Emma's grave was easy to find. Fresh flowers marked it, and I knew Mom had been there recently. I sat down in the grass next to her headstone and pulled out the journal she'd given me. I'm so sorry, I whispered to the darkness. I'm so sorry I didn't listen. I'm so sorry I wasted 10 years being angry about something you didn't even do. I'm so sorry you died thinking I hated you. I opened the journal and began to write. I wrote about the day everything went wrong, about Thomas's lie and my stubborn pride. I wrote about the 10 years I'd spent missing her without admitting it. I wrote about the letters I'd finally read and the truth I'd finally accepted. I wrote about the sister I'd lost and the twin I'd always be, no matter how much time had passed or how far apart we'd grown. I wrote about love that survives death, bonds that transcend silence, connections that can't be broken even by betrayal and time. I wrote until the moon was high and my hand was cramping and I'd filled half the journal with everything I'd never gotten to say. Then I placed a single sunflower on Emma's grave and made her a promise. I'll tell our story, I said. The real story. The one you always wanted me to write. And I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really were. Loyal and loving and true until the very end. As I drove home to my mother's house, I thought about something Emma had written in one of her letters. If you're holding a grudge against someone you love, call them today. Tomorrow might be too late. She was right. Tomorrow might be too late. Life is fragile and precious, and shorter than we think. The people we love deserve to know they're loved. The relationships that matter deserve to be fought for. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, can't wait for perfect timing or perfect understanding. I thought about everyone in my life who I'd been too proud to call, too hurt to forgive, too scared to reach out to. I thought about the relationships I'd let slip away, the words I'd left unsaid, the love I'd kept locked up because it felt safer than risking rejection. Emma spent 10 years loving me from a distance, writing letters I never read, hoping for a reconciliation that never came. She died still believing there was a chance we could be twins again. She died carrying the truth I'd been too stubborn to hear. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't let pride keep you from the people who matter. Don't let fear convince you that silence is safer than speaking up. Don't waste years hating someone for something they might not have even done. If there's someone in your life you need to forgive, forgive them today. If there's someone you need to apologize to, pick up the phone right now. If there's someone you love but haven't told them in too long, don't wait for the perfect moment. Call them today. Text them. Show up at their door. Whatever it takes, don't let another day pass in silence. Don't let pride steal years you can never get back. Don't let fear keep you from the relationships that make life worth living. Because tomorrow might be too late. Tomorrow, that truck might run the red light. Tomorrow, the person you love might be gone forever. And all you'll be left with is regret, and letters you never read, and words you never got to say. I spent 10 years hating the one person who loved me most in the world, 10 years punishing her for something she didn't do, 10 years missing my twin sister and convincing myself I was better off alone. Don't be like me. Don't waste a decade learning what I should have known from the beginning. That love is more important than pride, that forgiveness is stronger than fear, that family is worth fighting for even when it's hard. Emma's gone now. My twin sister, my other half, the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world. She's gone, and I'll never get another chance to tell her I'm sorry. I'll never get another chance to hug her and laugh with her and be her sister again. But you still have chances. You still have time. You still have people in your life who love you and miss you and want you back. Don't let those chances slip away. Don't let time run out like I did. Call them today. Forgive them today. Love them today. Before the story ends without you.